Hello and welcome to the Happy Insights podcast. I am your host, Happy Ali. Welcome to today's show. Today's show is going to be one of my favorites because the topic is really close to my heart. Today we have Dr. Neeta, the founder of the Global G.R.I.T Institute, a wellness education platform for optimizing well-being, and co-founder of Dharma Coaching Institute, a coaching organization training coaches to become the highest versions of themselves. Her book, That Sucked, Now What, is a real talk guide to personal growth that draws on embracing the suck while breaking through the lasting, audacious resilience. Dr. Neeta Bhushan, welcome to my show. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me.
I am really happy to talk to you because I feel like so many people go through the now what moment and this sucks moment. So,
Absolutely.
so I want to just cut to the chase and ask you, can you tell me a little bit about what I know the readers, once they read your book, they'll know the details of what caused you to get to this point and write this book. But can you give me a little background story about how it all became and what actually sucked?
Oh, wow. I've had a lot of sucky moments. I probably want to say oh, the first few chapters of my life, if my life were a book, the first few chapters of my life were plagued by survival. I was born and raised to my parents were immigrants, and my dad was from India, my mom was from the Philippines. And so, the immigrant mentality of let's work really, really hard, let's give our kids the best education and, all of the things and the best opportunities. And so I grew up in Chicago, and I was the eldest of uh two other siblings. So there were three of us, my two younger brothers and I. And I would probably say that we had a normal childhood up until I turned 10. And so it's piano lessons and all of the things, the Indian dance lessons, the Filipino dance lessons, all of that. But then as soon as I turned 10, I then became a caretaker to my mom, who then had breast cancer. And then between the ages of 10 and 19, I would watch my mom die to cancer. And then a year after my mom died, when I was 16, my brother, DJ, passed away. And
Wow.
then 2 years after that, I would have tragedy strike again. And my dad would succumb to his cancer diagnosis of stage 4 lung cancer 10 months after the diagnosis. So at 19, I'm left to then take care of my youngest brother, who was then 14. And so, I think that before I turned 20, I had a lot of these previous stories in my mind of, okay, I don't want people to think that I'm broken. I don't want people to think that I can't do anything. And so what my programming was in that time was not just survival, but it was also, I don't want anybody to judge me and the situation, because growing up, from an immigrant family, I was always told, big girls don't cry. Big girls don't, you're so strong, Neeta. This is happening to you for a reason. You're so strong. And I think all I wanted to do was really belong during all of these like horrendous losses, that I kept all of my feelings literally in my back pocket and, suppressing them, suppressing them, suppressing them. And I thought I dealt with it because I had, therapy when I was younger. And so I channeled all of that into all of these different coping mechanisms. And one of them was overachievement, success, education, accolades. Like that's the true immigrant story, right? And so I succeeded in all of those things, but then cut to the chase, 10 years later, I found myself in probably the biggest initiation of life, because if we keep suppressing and we keep resisting, guess what? It's going to persist. And so it literally exploded on me December 31st, a decade ago, pretty much actually. December 31st, I found myself basically in my master bedroom. At this point, I was a cosmetic dentist. I had proved to the world that I made it. I had the fancy cars. I even got myself married. I fell in love. And I saw myself in the mirror and I'm like, how in the world did I get here? Because this is not me. I don't even know who I am. Because my other coping mechanism that I didn't share was I latched on to relationships like it was going out of style. And like I did not want to let go. I was like, I don't care if you treat me well or not. And my life was threatened. I was, just mentally and emotionally and spiritually in a very tough place. That I had to make a really huge decision for myself December 31st. And that's when I recognized that I need to leave. I don't know where I'm going to go, but I know that I cannot stay here and I cannot stay in this reality that I had been suppressing for so long. And so after that, it was this journey to pick up the pieces because finally I allowed myself to break. Finally I allowed myself to say, I need help and I need support and just to utter those 3 words that fully would change my life because in saying that I allowed my family who I thought were going to judge me, my friends who I thought were going to judge me, I allowed them to help me. I allowed them to say, Neeta, we got you. Like we got you. And this was the first time for me to begin the process of grieving and healing and releasing all of this pain of the suck moments that I had literally had for the first 2 decades of my life. And so then getting into my 30s was all around healing, but it was also to connect the dots of, how people make decisions, what grit and resilience really is. And that really led me to unlearn and undo all of the patterns and the things that, I had to learn because of survival. Now I was choosing to unlearn because I thought that there would be a different way. And not that I would be pitying myself for going through the things or being ashamed for my story, instead of saying, okay, that sucked. Now what? And not just, oh, me and the victim of that circumstance or the victor and being the hero of my own story, but the middle of that, the bridge of that, which most of us ignore, which is the vulnerability piece of saying, that sucked. Yeah, I'm so sorry that you're going through that. I am so sorry that we're here in this relationship right now and it's not working out. And that just in and of itself, the acknowledgement of that is that vulnerability. Like I need help, right? Because Neetha 1.0 thought resilience was you have to be tough, you have to be strong, because guess what? That's what I was told when I was losing my mom, when I lost my dad, when I lost my brother unexpectedly to an asthma attack. And when you are so strong and brittle, like imagine a glass that is so strong, right? And it's brittle and it's tough. Guess what? When you release it, it breaks, it shatters into a million pieces, right? But if you take a ball that is hard, that's also tough, and you bounce it, a basketball is not going to break, it's going to bounce. So that led me to really understanding and so fascinated about human dynamics and how we in relationship, how we get to learn and grow and unlearn and how to really build. There's a concept in my book called the bounce factor and how we really build our ability to bounce during tough times, not break because we're not meant to. But are we allowed to flow and bend and get agile and flex even in times of distress and adversity so that we can bounce back higher?
I agree with you because, I'm product of immigrants. Well, I'm an immigrant, but my parents moved here. My mom still doesn't speak English that well. She's been here for over 30 years.
I love
And
that.
we go through so much because there's so much expectations put on us and everyone deals with it in such a different way, but you had no choice. you had to become the caretaker. It's such a different thing. And then, of course, to show strength is has so much different meanings in different cultures. But overall, I think the way that strength is just shown and been represented is to be tough. And I think that's just, it's really not necessarily the way if you want to live a happy life, because tougher you are, the harder you are, the less you allow in. And I think that on that December 31st, maybe you didn't have to even let go of certain circumstances and people in your life. You have to let go of you, of
Mhm.
your identity. And that it's tough for people. I'm a coach for women that are saying, so now what? That's basically what I do for a living. They're usually over 40, not around 30, where you had an earlier start in your life. But there is a moment where I feel that so many people, especially women, because women have so many roles that they have to fulfill, and it's not just bring home the bacon. And women really have to redefine and redesign who they are. And it's wonderful that you were able to do it at such a young age. And now you can be a leader and a way shower for so many other people who are really in the same situation, saying, so now what? And I love your whole concept of bouncing, because I believe in it so much, because if you don't bounce, you break.
It's true, and I think that for a lot of moms and a lot of women, who have so much and who are juggling so much, it's so easy to then break because we're not giving ourselves the permission to allow, because there is this concept that we have to be, a mother martyr like Mother Teresa, where we give, 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 and at the end of it, we're, like, so depleted. And honestly, this book, really was birthed out because I then joined motherhood. I became a mom. And, the last 5 years, I think with pandemic and and I was actually pregnant during it. And so with my second child, and the subtitle is actually happy how to embrace the joy in chaos and find magic in the mess. And the reason for that is, well, I mean, I know I had my training wheels on with, all of the suck moments that I had gone through, but nothing actually prepares you for the suck and the simultaneous full embrace of all of the emotions that can exist when you get into parenthood. And, with the sleepless nights, yet you still are, like, so tired, but you're scrolling on your phone because you wanna look at the photos of your child, and then, and then you're kind of going on this, like, hamster wheel of all of this chaos where you then have to re-identify with your identity. And that was the biggest thing for me was, okay, how can I actually integrate all of the feelings, the messy, the chaos? And in the book, I talk about, there's four different ways to actually build your bounce factor for anyone who wants to actually build that audacious resilience. Yet most of it comes from our ability. The third aspect of building your bounce factor is the ability to actually feel your feelings. Because if we say, how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm good. I got this. Because society is like, you got this, mama, queen, all of these things. But we don't allow ourselves to share, actually, I don't have this. It sucks. Like, it sucks right now that I don't know what my identity is. Like, for a really long time, I was known in the world for my very first book, which was called Emotional Grit. And it helped leaders master their emotions. That was my first book, within emotional health. And then I have my son, Ari, and I'm like, I don't even know. This is the first time I had to get mothered myself. And allowing my co-pilot, my husband Ajit, and his mom, my mother-in-law, be like, I'm going to help you, the 40-day sitting in period. I refused it. I refused it so much because there was still healing that I had to do around receiving, because I wasn't used to it because I grew up so early and so fast. I was like pushing it away. But it kind of came back to like my worthiness. And I had to even repeat the mantra, you are worthy of receiving love. You know,
Which is what I was going to ask you, because the first question I ask everyone who
yeah.
is like you,
I'm
well,
getting teary-eyed right now.
well, it is, how do you learn to receive? Because I mean, I am a single parent. I have twin 5-year olds that I had after my son died. And I just had to throw myself into the situation where I thought, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it and I've got this. And I remember the kids being a couple of years old and I just breaking down. And my name is Happy. So guess what? I've gone through the let's do this. I've got this. And I really thought I handled everything so well because I thought, oh, just change your perspective and you're happy. And I did such a good job. And then one day I thought, am I repressing stuff?
Mm,
Because I received my joy through an out of body kind of near death experience. So I felt it was
wow.
so legit and it wasn't somebody imposing it on me. It was my own epiphanies and my own enlightenment. But there was a moment where I thought, God, if I don't feel these emotions, they're going somewhere
Mhm.
and they got to come out. That's why I'm resonating so much with what you're saying. And to be honest with you, I was approached by your publicist about your book and I don't really do too many interviews. I have my own publicist that I work with that does refer me to people that are more in the spiritual realm and more in the therapy realm and the woo woo kind of. But your story resonated with me so much that I had to like stop, read, and this book that you wrote and the processes I feel that are so, so needed today because so many people are going through different versions of what you've gone through. And the rebirthing is happening, the rebirthing of the identity and having someone to kind of show the way and give a really nice framework. You have offered a wonderful framework, which it was you can explain it, but it was the falling, igniting, rising, magnifying
Yeah.
onto thriving, because most of us start out in survival mode and then have to end up in thriving mode, and but no one bridges the two. Say you don't
Yes.
survive, you have to thrive. That's become a cliche now, but I feel like you are actually bridging the two and giving a framework. So if you want to just elaborate a little bit more on that,
Yeah, yeah,
love that.
absolutely. It's a framework that I've now, shared with thousands of my students and, in every closed door talk that I've ever given because it's basically my own research over the last, decade or so, ever since I actually decided to now, leave dentistry, sell my practice, and really understand and do the research that led me to my very, very first book, Emotional Grit. But this is a story that I tell because I think that is so important. And when my first book, Emotional Grit, was published, I was living in the Bay Area at the time. It's when I actually, got brave and I moved cross country. And I was approached by, very prominent Silicon Valley moms. And they got a hold of my book and they said, Neeta, would you do a talk for the moms at this Silicon Valley school? It was in Palo Alto. And if you know Palo Alto, it's kind of where, all of the tech folks send their kids. And, during that time period, they had quite a few suicides in that 1 year. And so they said, is there another way that you can actually build grit and or resilience without going through what you've been through? Can you please help us? And, it was something that I became so obsessed about because what they asked was they had lost children and that were in high school and they thought they were doing the best that they could, pushing their kids, right? And so I got really fascinated around, what are some of the ways that people actually make decisions? And is it that if we have helicopter parents, that our kids are not going to be as resilient or we can't build resilience? Or is it that folks that need to actually go through something so distraught, so grave, so terrible to actually build resilience and bounce. So that's really what came up, was the bounce factor. And of course, I've already talked about, the first part is, feeling the feels. Like if you're going to suppress it, it's going to come out in another way, like you said, Happy. But most people don't necessarily look back at their upbringing. They don't look back at some of the cultural factors. They don't look back at, was it okay to share your voice at the dinner table? Was it okay to do what the brothers were doing outside? Or were you actually separated because, the girls were not meant to do that, and the boys? I know in my family, that's exactly what was the case. And also culturally, not supposed to talk back to the elders, right? Never. You'd get a slap if you did that. But we can't change our upbringing, but if we're actually making peace with it, we can actually expose ourselves to good stress, which is the third factor. Now, good stress is actually how we get ourselves out of the bubble of complacency, out of the bubble of literally changing our lives. Like December 31st was my way of literally diving, leaping, quantum leaping into good stress, because I left everything that I pretty much knew, and then unraveling in the years to come, even my, $1 million practice that I had that was really cushy and comfortable, decided, which was my own journey, but decided to leap for something else. Again, good stress. How much good stress are you actually opening yourself up to? And that can look like physical, like taking a cold shower every day, or, running a mile, doing 20 burpees. Physical, right? Emotional could look like having a difficult conversation, telling somebody, instead of, no, that's okay that you ghosted on me. That's okay that you didn't reply back to my emails. Actually telling them, actually, no, that really hurt me that you did that, right? Sharing how you actually feel. That's good stress. Putting yourself out there, working with you, Happy, that's good stress, because that's really taking you into the next leap of your life, right? And then finally, the fourth aspect is the self-awareness piece. And the self-awareness piece is just really tuning in. Okay, is this actually good for me right now? I actually noticed that I'm having heart palpitations again. I probably should say no to the next four things that are on my agenda. Really paying attention to the things that we constantly ignore. Um, to then fly forward. And like you mentioned, fly forward is another framework that I have in the book that actually takes us through some of the sucky moments, to then thrive, because we have situated and acknowledged our bounce factor through and there's 5 different stages that I actually talk about in the book. Yeah.
It's so important to actually enjoy the sucky moments after a while too, because as you've seen, well, we're not going to talk about I'm not really talking about the death aspect of the things that you had to go through, but the moments where you're like, oh, this sucks. I mean, it does include that, but that's such a different animal to try to, and you have to feel all of those. But I'm talking about the other stuff, those moments where you're just like, oh, shoot, like I feel like this is too much for me. This does suck. But those moments sometimes propel you forward so much more than if your life was completely comfortable. And even the death stuff really does push you forward, because you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all of that stuff. But it's sometimes hard for certain people to hear that when they're going through it. So I kind of shy away from it. In my other material, I do talk about like how, death has really caused me to become who I am. Death of, a child is really big, but I've had a lot of death around me, my best friend, a lot of people, but it just kind of made me the person I am. And I look back at it in hindsight and say, wow, I don't
Wow.
know if I'm willing to be that person that I was before all this stuff happened to me.
Ugh.
And you embrace it. You think of yourself as not necessarily this that's being tossed around, but like you said, having self-awareness and realizing that and seeing it from a third perspective, kind of seeing that, okay, I'm going through this. It's okay. I'm going to feel this. And there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable. There's nothing wrong with being in pain. There's nothing wrong with telling people. that you're hurting right now. And boundaries, you didn't use the word boundaries, but I felt like that was what you were implying when you said, this is what you got to do. You got to tell people, hey, this conversation is not good for me, or this moment is not good for me. And good stress. I love that term, good stress, because you really don't hear that. I don't hear that term, good stress. So I love that you say it that way, because I think that it is through good stress that any kind of growth does happen.
Oh, absolutely. And I just want to honor you, Happy, for even, sharing that, because the death and the loss of a child is just is heart-wrenching. I mean, I know that that's really what contributed to so much grief for my dad, since my brother was sudden loss for him, and obviously for all of us we grieve differently, but I know especially for my father it was just so awful. So I share that and
It's hard,
honor
but
you with that.
back to what you were saying. Okay, so death is hard on its own, in its own category. Parenting is its own thing. It's
Oh.
all of this stuff. That's probably why I relate to women so much, because I'm a mom dad. I'm a full-time
Mhm.
dad mom. And
Oh,
I'm not
wow.
using the word mom as in I'm a mom, but I have the traditional role of a mother and all the traditional roles of a father, and I have twins that are just tornadoing all over the place.
Oh my
Every
goodness.
moment I have to question myself, say, what am I doing? Am I doing it right? Am I screwing them
Mhm.
up? So that I think is its own challenge that never goes away. And
Yes.
it's just, life is very, very fascinating. Let's put it that way.
It's fascinating. It's all of the feels. There's actually a page in my book where, when you get into the fly forward framework, which is part 2, there is there's actually, and I'm going to see. Oh, here it is. There is an image here, and it's in when you get into the rising stage. So let's just say a sucky moment happened and you have to actually take action. You have a death sentence or a life sentence, or some major thing has contributed to a fall, which is stage 1. You have to take action. So are you going to stay in that corporate job, or are you going to leave? Are you going to stay in that relationship where they cheated on you, or are you going to go, or are you going to seek help, right? What is that next action step, which is the ignite stage 2? But when you get to stage 3, which is in rising, and I think perhaps maybe a lot of folks who may not, who the wound is still open, and then they start to work with you, Happy, is that they're in this stage 3, the rising stage. They've done something really monumental, hard. They've recognized they need help. They've recognized they need that support. So they've turned on the ignition, they've had that spark, and now they're in rising. Rising is when you're actually open and you're saying yes to new experiences, yes to new opportunities, yet you're still skeptical. Maybe you have a complexity of both emotions. And basically it's this meme where it's possible to feel both nervous and excited, right? That, okay, I'm going to go on this new date and I'm going to be a little bit reserved. Or maybe you're open yet still reserved, right? You're open yet reserved, even in creating the next thing that you want to do. You're cautious. It could also be that you're willing, but maybe you're a little judgmental. So I think that the duality and the complexity of both emotions can exist at the same time, because I think, as you probably pointed out, Happy, there were moments of happiness, and in my grief journey as well as my healing journey, there were the moments, the slivers of joy, the slivers of happiness, the slivers of fun, even though I was like, fuck, I shouldn't be experiencing this right now. I shouldn't be happy right now. But as a teenager, I'm like, oh, there's a cute boy, right? The humanness still came out, but can I still be grieving about the crazy losses that I was going through? Absolutely. And I think that in motherhood, it's so easy to embrace the duality of all of the feels all at once, because it is everything all at once
Sorry.
every day.
Laugh at you. I resonate with some of this stuff so much that it makes me giggle, because it's so true. I have these moments all the time.
I mean, happy, it's the reason why the title is called That Sucked, Now What? I wanted it to be happy, but I wanted it to be paradoxical. I wanted it to express the paradox of all of the emotions that can coexist all at the same time, right? You know, women write to me, they're like, "Yeah, but how can I be happy that I got cheated on?" Well, you say the mantra, that sucked. Now what? It sucks. And I know, once we get through the initial stages of the pain, of the anguish, and allowing yourself to grieve, perhaps maybe then we get to the rising stage and you're pepping in your new step. And maybe you realize that that relationship wasn't good for you. And then you still say, I have a whole embodiment emotional release practice that I fully talk about in the book and I take you through. And for those who are curious, you can go to thatsuckednowwhat.com because when you actually pre-order the book, you unlock my 5-day emotional release, my healing practice over 5 days. And we start out with day one being healing those relationships because those are the greatest dynamics that we have, whether it's love, whether it's friendship, whether it's family members.
Or
And
just
so,
sometimes for
and
ourselves, sometimes it's just our own relationship with ourselves. I don't know if you cover that, but
absolutely. Yeah, it's day 5. We bring it back to self because none of it matters. We can do day 3 on activating our courage, day 4 in calling in abundance and prosperity and manifesting what you desire, but none of it all matters if you can't connect it back to yourself because you are the direct source. And that's day 5. And it's all for free, by the way, when you actually go to thatsuckednowwhat.com. There's also, the meme that I just shared with you. There's a lot more of those prompts and questions in going into your upbringing. And there's 40 pages of journal prompts in the actual digital guidebook that gets unlocked as well when you actually order the book too.
well, thank you so much for actually making companion products to go with it, because I feel that when you do it more of a process, then you get a lot more out of it. It's funny because the interview that I did in second week of November with Stephen Washington, he did something. He wrote a book called Recovering You about like
Mm.
going through the process of addiction, and he had so many steps in it. And I had another uh, book, an author who worked with basically working with your body and listening to your body's message, and she had processes. And I feel like more and more books are coming out with that are more of an experiential kind of thing, and I think it's so
Yeah.
powerful because there's so many times you pick up a book, you read it, you put it down, and it doesn't really penetrate. But having a companion, downloads and things, I think that's really important. And really just fine tuning the relationship with yourself. I want to thank you so much for being on the show. The book is out this week, in January 31st, 2023 was the release date. So I'm really, really excited for everyone to go out and get it. I think that it is a must have for many, many people because everyone's life sucks at one time or another.
Well,
And
and I think it's our way to normalize the suck, normalize those sucky moments so that we could actually talk about it and support one another. As we're going through, those times that I'm sure people supported you and myself even. That's one of the through lines as to why I'm here is because of the support that I had early on. And I hope you can encourage this with any of you that are listening to even just, you can grab a book for a girlfriend or somebody else that's struggling and pay it forward. It's the best way to do that. So
I love
thank you
that.
so much for having me. Happy.
Well, what I always do is when I love a book, I buy like 5 of them and it's Christmas presents and things like that. Because you always know when you're reading a book, like,
Yes.
I know this
Right.
person needs it and this person needs it, but sometimes they're not willing to or ready to hear it. But then
Or maybe when it like arrives on their doorstep, they're like, oh, it's a sign. I do that all the time. I'll like secretly gift it to certain friends that I won't tell them that it's coming. But
or they just open it when it's time.
yeah.
That's what I have my book that I have given to so many people because mine came out last year, and I have people now saying, "Oh my God, I just read this chapter I needed to hear that. I'm like, okay, at least it was in your bookshelf, sitting there staring back at you. But I think that, thanks for doing some seriously amazing work, and good luck with motherhood. I know that you're gonna need all the luck in the world and as many books as possible, because it's definitely one of the most interesting things that I have experienced in my life. Um, and I really, really thank you from the bottom of my heart, not for being on my show, only for being on my show, but for writing this book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Happy. It was such a pleasure. And actually, I have a special gift for all of your listeners. For those of you who are struggling with trying to, make sense and make peace with your emotions, and maybe this is like a new stage for you that you just don't know how to have a grasp on, you can go ahead and download my guidebook on just how to actually make peace with your emotions. It's globalgrit.co/EG guidebook.
Okay, will you spell that out really quick?
I will, yes. Global Grit. So that's GLOBALGRIT.co/EG guidebook.
Yeah, I'm gonna go download it right now, and then if I have clients that I feel like need a little bit of resources, I can just pass it on to them, because my clients love to read
Oh, thank you
stuff,
for
and
that.
they always want more homework and more stuff. And because our
Yes,
message is so similar, and I deal with polarity all the time, because I believe that real shift
so
comes from the
important.
forces of polarity. And if you embrace the dark and the light, and then you see them as the one fueling force that pushes you out of your comfort zone, then it's really powerful. So
It's so healing.
I will be definitely checking that out and passing it on. So thank you again, and thank you for my viewers and my few viewers and my many listeners. Hopefully, many viewers as well. For watching, please write a review and let us know what you think. And make sure to check out Dr. Neeta Bhushan's work, and it's amazing. You'll love the book. You love it. Thank you so much.
Mm. Thank you so much, Happy.
Have a good day. All right. Bye bye.